Life Audio.
Our next encouragement for you will feature Dr. Greg and Erin Smalley on the subject of affirmation in marriage, and financial authority Tom Techmeyer shares the difference between gambling and investing.
Welcome to the Encouragement for You podcast, brought to you by Encouragement Communications in association with the Salem Web Network and is part of the Life Audio Faith Toolkit series. For more inspirational, faith-affirming podcasts, visit lifeaudio.com. In just a moment, your host, Don Hawkins, will introduce today's episode. First, a word from our sponsors.
What do you think of when you hear the Salvation Army? Maybe it's the bells we ring at Christmas. Or maybe the work we do to help people with addiction recovery. Or our disaster relief efforts.
The emotional and spiritual care part to these families who have been traumatized by it.
Well, we also produce a network of Christian shows you can listen to on your favorite podcast store or even local radio station. One of those shows, Words of Life, is a weekly 15-minute show featuring powerful testimonies.
I didn't think that the Lord could use me in this way. Like me, Lord, do you know my
Engaging
background?
conversations about topics impacting the church today.
The number one reason people give for wanting to work for an organization is trusted leadership.
And deep dive Bible studies.
In Genesis chapter 2, we have only one perspective going on. That's God's perspective. God's perspective was love.
Listen to Words of Life on your favorite podcast store or visit salvationarmyradio.org to learn about more shows produced by the Salvation Army.
Follow the Bible in a Year with Jack Graham podcast today. Begin your New Year's resolution with the Bible and see why millions have already started Bible in a Year with Jack Graham.
This podcast was created to help you solidify your faith as you experience the story of the Bible through live action recordings and emotional orchestral music.
Listen to Bible in a Year with Jack Graham on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts app, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Dr. Greg Smalley serves as Vice President for Families of Focus on the Family, and his wife Erin is a licensed Christian therapist. In our initial segment, they join host Don Hawkins to explain the value of affirmation between marriage partners.
In Gary Chapman's great book, The 5 Love Languages, there's one of the love languages, words of affirmation. And what I love about that is that, as you talked about earlier, one of the deepest human needs is to feel affirmed or to feel appreciated. In other words, people thrive on hearing it verbalized how much people appreciate one another. But it's a very complicated issue. I mean, as Erin and I started studying this concept, we realized that, that verse in Proverbs 18:21 that says the tongue has the power of life and death. That's huge.
Yeah.
I mean, if you really think about it, our words can bring life to someone, but also death. And a good marriage must be created. A good marriage isn't going to just happen. It's going to be because we put effort and we put energies in. Don, probably one of the best ways that we can put in work at a great marriage is through our words. And that's why tonight what we would love to do is to challenge the listeners to pick one thing that we talk about, just one, and do it regardless of what your spouse does or that other person, that significant other, and try it this week and bring life to someone.
Yeah, instead of bringing death. That great verse, Proverbs 18:21, death and life are in the power of the tongue. Erin, who's better at affirmation, men or women?
I would say naturally it's probably women, because women are just better with connecting emotionally through their words. However, I'm certain that there's men out there that really specialize in this and really try to affirm their wife, mainly because all of us need it, but I think women maybe are better at asking for it.
Yeah. And Greg, let me just for a minute broaden this out. It seems to me that verbal affirmation is critical in a marriage relationship. It can also help in the workplace. It can help in friendships and relationships. That
everywhere.
It's pretty strategic.
Well, I mean, because again, it doesn't say the married tongue, is the power of life or death. I mean, it says the tongue. So any relationship, especially with our kids. I mean, you name the relationship.
Yeah.
The rewards from affirming that relationship are endless. And you know, for us, Don, funny enough, the first time we really realized this was 2 weeks into our marriage.
Okay.
You know, Don,
tell me more.
like Greg said, we'd been married for about 2 weeks, and as a new young bride, I simply wanted to hear how I was doing as a wife. And so I asked Greg a very simple question. Honey, how am I doing as a wife? We've been married for 2 weeks. How am I as a wife? I'd never been a wife before.
Take one guess what I said.
You'll get better.
Okay, that may have shut me down. What you said was bad enough. That would
have been worse.
That would
right?
have devastated me.
Yeah, that would have been bad. Well, see, that's what happened when we brought our twins home from the hospital. Our next-door neighbor came over, and you can imagine how Kathy felt when he looked at them and took one look at the two of them and said, they'll get better looking.
Oh, ouch.
Ooh, that was not affirming.
That's right, and you moved the next day, I'm sure.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what, that house is no longer there.
Well, luckily, I said fine.
Yep.
Or maybe not luckily.
Well,
I hadn't been married before, so I didn't have any context.
I was going to say, you managed to come up with the right answer. You're doing great. You're doing fine.
Yeah, I don't know that it was the right answer, Don. It was fine. Feelings inside not expressed.
Okay.
I tell you, what she was looking for is for me to affirm how she was doing as a wife, and I didn't get it, and it took me a while. And you know, one of the things that there's lots of ways to do this. So let's just jump in. One of the ways that we can provide affirmation for our spouse is through words of gratitude. This is just a real simple, just saying thank you. But it's not just thank you. It's actually picking out specific things that you've noticed that they've done throughout the day that you appreciated and actually verbalizing those. You know what, thanks for, you know, I was out of town when our taxes came due, and I forgot to finish that off. And so I called home in panic saying, hey, Aaron, would you do this? But then I also remembered when I got home to say, hey, you know what? Thanks for turning that in. I know that probably wrecked your day and you had to do extra stuff, but thanks for taking the time to do that for our family.
Yeah, and if she hadn't, they might have taken you both to jail.
Exactly.
That's right.
It was,
of course.
Yeah, motivation.
That's right. And, of course, it's so important to know that when you have a spouse or a friend or a child that their primary love language is words of affirmation. I know for Greg, when I say thank you in return or I praise him for something that he's done, it just brings a life to him.
Yeah.
It is just such a basic need for him. And that's another one is words of praise, of just telling your spouse, you know, gosh, you did such a great job in that presentation you did last night. You know, I saw it, you got up there and you did a great job, or what a great job you did with the kids today.
Yeah.
You know, I saw how you got down and really talked to Garrison about his little owie on his foot. You know, I noticed that. And just taking time to praise each other.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be a huge thing either. It doesn't have to be that you accomplish some feat, you climb Mount Everest or you know, something of that nature. It can be a relatively small thing. Maybe you navigated through traffic, or maybe you came home on time and were there for supper or something of that nature. It seems like for a person whose love language is words of affirmation, even praise for little things and even little expressions of gratitude can go a long way.
We'll be back with more after a brief word from our sponsors. And don't forget to listen for Dawn's live weekend talk show, Encouragement Live, heard Saturdays at 7:05 p.m. Central Time on American Family Radio and other radio stations around the country, as well as on the worshipchannel.org.
Follow the Bible in a Year with Jack Graham podcast today. Begin your New Year's resolution with the Bible and see why millions have already started Bible in a Year with Jack Graham.
This podcast was created to help you solidify your faith as you experience the story of the Bible through live action recordings and emotional orchestral music.
Listen to Bible in a Year with Jack Graham on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts app, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hello, this is Dr. Doug Groothuis, host of Truth Tribe, where we seek the truth through reason and evidence about what matters most. And we are not tribal, since truth is for everyone. Please join me at the Truth Tribe as I discuss the reasons for Christian faith, the Christian worldview, and moral issues such as abortion and gender ideology. To listen now, go to lifeaudio.com or search Truth Tribe on your favorite podcast app.
Tom Techmeyer is the founder and president of Techmeyer Financial Services in Omaha, Nebraska. His concern over the dangers inherent in gambling are evident in this conversation with host Don Hawkins, during which he explains the difference between investing and gambling.
Our subject is the difference between gambling and investing.
This is the New King James, at least, that talks about it. It says that dishonest money will dwindle, but money gathered little by little will surely grow. And so the whole idea is that the wise man understands that being a faithful steward with whatever resources have been entrusted to you takes time and hard work in order to do well with those financial resources. Gambling, on the other hand, obviously, tries to get people to, Satan uses the tool of gambling, as it were, to convince people or try to get them to believe, in other words, that there is something for nothing, that you can get rich quick, that all of these kind of things are just fine and dandy, and that they don't cause anybody any problems or any heartache. And, of course, nothing could be further of the truth. Gambling is one of many great evils that, but it may be one of the fastest growing evils that have been put upon people in their never-ending desire for quick riches, and they think that they can live the good life just by hitting it big at the roulette wheel or the blackjack table, and obviously that. What really happens in most cases, all but a precious few, is that in its wake leaves the smoldering remains of lives wrecked and ruined because they didn't have enough sense to push themselves away from the table, or better yet, to go into the casino in the first place.
And the sad thing, Tom, is that not only do you have casino gambling now, most states have lotteries, they have Powerball, and in addition to that, you have online gambling, which has become just a huge industry in our day.
Oh, Don, that's very true, and that's a very good point, and no discussion on gambling would be complete if you didn't kind of set this up, just the direction that you headed there. I mean, I can think back when I was a kid, some 40 years ago or so, and my folks helped me to understand very early on that gambling was something that was done by bad men in back rooms that were poorly lit and filled with smoke. And if the police showed up and raided the joint, they hauled them all off to prison.
Right.
Well, today, it's just the opposite. It's the lead story on the 10 o'clock news, the Powerball numbers and whatnot. And I just think, my, oh my, it's a case where we have certainly fallen a long way here, and so I mean I think it's really important that we talk about these kind of things and that we try and address them, and hopefully can answer some questions and point out some things that will help give people some insight as to exactly what we're up against here as people get more and more addicted to gambling on a daily basis. And it's not just outside the church, or it's not just non-Christians. I mean, it really has affected all kinds of people from every walk of life. It is no respecter of persons in regard to race, color, or creed, or economic status. Any of those. I mean, I've known some very wealthy people who their children had everything, and yet I know of one young man who found his way up to the casino boats up the river, up the interstate here, and lost about $250,000 of his parents' money. Wow. And they were very well to do, and so they could bail him out of that. But it was just a terrible situation. And of course, then I've seen the other side of it too, where the very poor who and it often preys
can least afford it.
Yeah, that's right. It often preys upon the weakest and meekest among us who can least afford it, and then these are the people, Don, who then start embezzling from their employer or stealing from one place or another to try and pay their bills or to cover their debts, and all it does is it just digs them a deeper hole from which they have no hope of climbing out from, apart from a relationship with Christ.
Tom, we've drawn a contrast and a comparison, and some people think that there really is more of a comparison, that investing is like gambling. And if that is the case, then Techmeyer Financial Services is engaged in the wrong business. But you've drawn a strong threefold contrast between gambling and investing.
Well, I really have, Don, and it came to me after a lot of prayer and a lot of thought, and it's just one of those things that's very clearly etched in my mind, where I had been struggling with that very issue, and people had often jokingly, but with a degree of seriousness or conviction in their voice, told me that what I did was nothing more than legalized gambling, and that there wasn't any more to it than that. And instinctively, I knew that couldn't be right. That I was very uncomfortable with that.
Yeah.
The thought that I could be involved in something like that I just thought the Lord would not have me doing something if there was something wrong with it like that.
But you had to wrestle it through.
I did, yeah, I really did. And so I began to pray about it, and I remember just clearly one morning sitting on the floor in one of our bedrooms before we had kids, and it was just like clearly revealed unto me, these three things just came right into my mind, just clear as a bell. I mean, and I just know that was the work of the Holy Spirit. It's just great to talk about this, and because it's been a long time since I've done so, and the problem just gets bigger and bigger and bigger.
Yeah, it's huge.
And it's really amazing that, I mean, you can't hardly drive anywhere without hearing a commercial on the radio or seeing a billboard or reading a newspaper or watching a ball game on TV, but what the local casinos in Las Vegas aren't calling you with their siren song, trying to draw you into their clutches and snares to leave all your hard-earned money with them. And so it really is becoming a very major problem. And, of course, we know from practical research and reports from police departments and sheriffs and state patrol, and that the numbers don't lie, that wherever gambling is pervasive, you see significant increases in crime, including drugs, prostitution, violent crimes, burglary, robbery, assault. You also see a marked increase in personal bankruptcies. You just can't you can't ignore numbers like that and say that it doesn't have any impact. It most certainly does. And I know recently I read a report that in counties in Iowa, because they have expanded gambling in Iowa, which is our neighbor state here to the east, but in the counties that touch a county or surround a county that has a casino, bankruptcies over the last 5 years have been increasing at a rate of greater than 30% a year.
Wow.
So, I mean, those are significant numbers, and it's very unfortunate. But as you stated a moment ago, we really believe that there are three major distinctions between gambling and investing, and this is why we believe that investing is not a roll of the dice, but we also believe that as a result of this, that investing is something that God honors.
Part of good stewardship.
Yeah, that it is a part of faithful and good stewardship.
It's money gathered little by little, going back to Proverbs 13.
Yes, and that gambling is something he detests.
Right.
That he does not honor. That grieves his spirit. And so, obviously, in our desire to be faithful stewards, we can look at gambling as an honorable thing and as under the Lord, while we can look at gambling as something that's of Satan.
Yeah. Investing is honorable, gambling is dishonorable.
Exactly. We want to draw that clear distinction. And then so once you understand that, then you move into the realm of, okay, well, why is that, and how can you tell the difference? Well, the first thing is that with gambling, there's always a clock that is ticking. And what I mean by that, if you think about it for a moment, is that when the horses run through the finish line, or when the wheel stops spinning, or when the dice stop rolling, or when the cards stop turning, at that point in time, you are either declared a winner or a loser.
Yeah.
There's just no two ways about it. That's just how it works. It doesn't go on indefinitely.
Yeah.
The clock ticks, and boom, it's over, and you're a winner or a loser. Now, that's not true with investing. Let me give you an example of that. I have had, I've been doing this for 25 years, as you know.
Right.
And I've had clients that I've had the privilege of working for and with and serving over those 25 years. And I know for a fact that they have owned Coca-Cola stock, not too far down the road from you.
Right.
Grandpa and Grandma bought it, back in the 30s. They passed on and left it to their son,
right.
in the 80s. He passed on and left it to his son in the 2000s, and It just goes on and on and on, passed on from one generation to the next.
There is no ticking clock.
No, there's no ticking clock. At no point in time has anybody, has the alarm gone off or the bell rang and said, okay, let's pull out our Coca-Cola stock and see if we've won or lost.
Mm-hmm.
No, it doesn't work that way, you see. Now, that's not to say, certainly, that from those three generations of family members, that at any given time, there were certain periods of time where the stock, might have been at $50 and then pulled back to $40, but then it might have gone to $60 and then dropped to $50.
Or you could have invested in Ajax Cola and found out it was a dog stock and lost your money.
Well, yeah, the point is that it can and does go up and down in value. But again, even when it's down,
it can come back.
When the bell doesn't ring or the clock stops ticking and say, okay, let's check and see, is Don Hawkins and his Coca-Cola stock a winner or a loser? No, see, it doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
That's a great thing about investing. There is no ticking clock.
No ticking clock. Let's talk about the second distinction. We get all three of these in here in just a few minutes.
Yeah, the second one is that gambling is a zero-sum game. If our listeners aren't familiar with that term, it simply means that for somebody to win, at least one other person has to lose.
Yeah, and usually a lot of other people have to lose.
Yeah, in gambling, and the only reason that is that's how they come up with the big payoffs.
Right.
You see, a whole bunch of people have put money in the one-armed bandit, lost it, and then eventually one poor sucker, he wins it and thinks, oh, look, this is great. Look what I've done.
And somebody won like $200 million in a Powerball game recently. How many people literally put their life savings into making that happen?
Yeah. Yeah, well, and it's just the idea that someone wins, someone else or many other people have to lose. That's how they pay the winnings. So if I win while gambling, it always comes at the expense of someone else. You know what I'm saying?
Sure, exactly.
It doesn't work that way with investing. Let's say we'll use our Coca-Cola stock again as an example.
Oh, yes.
Let's just say that you bought Coca-Cola stock back in the 70s at $30 a share.
Mm-hmm.
And in the 80s, you sold it to somebody at $40. And in the 90s, they sold it to somebody at $50.
Mm-hmm.
And in 2002, they sold it to somebody at $60. So you see there, the whole point is that along that line of progression there, nobody benefited at the expense of somebody else.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Nobody had to lose in order for somebody else to win. Just think about that. What a great thing God has given us here.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Nobody has to lose for somebody else to win.
Now, sometimes the economy does shrink. It does tend to back up, but typically those are cycles, and the cycle turns into something more beneficial eventually.
Well, and go back to rule number one. Clock's not ticking.
Right.
You're not forced to, nobody's putting a gun at your head saying, okay, that thing's down 20%, sell it. No, you see. I just really like the idea. Galatians 6 reminds us that as we have opportunity, let us do good to all men, especially those who are the household of faith. Well, gambling violates that biblical principle.
Mm-hmm.
While it may benefit a few, it does lasting and devastating damage to many individuals and families and businesses. So investing, when properly done, never puts someone in a position to lose because someone else has won.
All right, so we have already that gambling has a ticking clock and a zero-sum game. What's the third distinction between gambling and investing?
Yeah, it's one of my favorite ones here, that with gambling, nothing of any lasting or eternal value is created.
No lasting value.
No, it's all poured down the black hole that finds its way to Las Vegas and other places that benefits owners of casinos and evil people tied up in organized crime probably and other things, but it doesn't create anything of any eternal or lasting value. I've no one has ever been able to demonstrate that anything of eternal value has ever resulted. When you think about the hospitals around here, there's Methodist Hospital and Lutheran Hospital, and they've got Mount Sinai Hospital, and I have yet to see one, come from the gambling industry.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Encouragement for You with Don Hawkins, host of Encouragement Live Radio and author of over 25 books, including Never Give Up and Master Discipleship Today. You can find more about Don and his books at encouragementlive.org. Encouragement for You is a production of Encouragement Communications with the Salem Web Network and lifeaudio.com. Editing by Phil Giebers, production by Elizabeth Andrade. If you enjoyed what you heard today, we'd love for you to head over to your favorite podcast app and leave us a review. It really does help people find us.
Let me take just a second to thank the team at Life Audio for their partnership with us on Encouragement for You. If you go to lifeaudio.com, you'll find dozens of other faith-centered podcasts in their network. They've got shows about prayer, Bible study, parenting, and more.
Stay encouraged and join us next time for Encouragement for You.
Follow the Bible in a Year with Jack Graham podcast today. Begin your New Year's resolution with the Bible and see why millions have already started Bible in a Year with Jack Graham.
This podcast was created to help you solidify your faith as you experience the story of the Bible through live action recordings and emotional orchestral music.
Listen to Bible in a Year with Jack Graham on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts app, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hello, this is Dr. Doug Groothuis, host of Truth Tribe, where we seek the truth through reason and evidence about what matters most. And we are not tribal, since truth is for everyone. Please join me at the Truth Tribe as I discuss the reasons for Christian faith, the Christian worldview, and moral issues such as abortion and gender ideology. To listen now, go to lifeaudio.com or search Truth Tribe on your favorite podcast app.